How do you kind of bridge the gap there, and how can we do it in a way that, I mean, a big part of what we always wanted to do was keep the agents in the loop.
This is the Insurance Technology Podcast, where we bring interesting people from across the insurance ecosystem to discuss and debate technology's impact on the industry. Join us each episode for insights and best practices from industry stewards and tomorrow's innovators. Now, here's your host, Reid Holzworth.
Welcome to the Insurance Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Reid Holzworth. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Adam Kiefer. I met Adam Kiefer at the Big I InsurTech Summit. I actually didn't know him then. It was kind of funny. I was taking the boat over in Savannah, Georgia, and I was waiting for the ferry boat to go across the river to go in town. And true story, I was going to go over and smoke some cigars and have some beers. And I was talking to these nice folks, and then there goes Adam. Didn't know him. Came up. He's like, "Hey, you're Reid." He's like, "I'm Adam." I'm like, "Oh, hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "You want to hang out?" And he's like, "Yeah, let's hang out." So we ended up spending the whole day together, and the both of us, and Adam is an avid cigar smoker, which is awesome, ended up smoking some cigars and drinking some beers. And so I got to know Adam really, really well prior to this interview. In this episode, we're going to hear about Adam and his life story and how he got into insurance and insurance technology. And then we're going to hear a lot about Talage and what they're doing. It's really good stuff. You really find it interesting. Adam's an awesome guy. Stay tuned.
Joining me today in bright, beautiful, sunny, little bit cold, Savannah, Georgia, here at the Big I InsurTech Summit, is Adam Kiefer, founder and CEO of Talage. Adam, welcome.
Reid, thank you very much. Glad to be here. In the States, we call it Talage mostly.
Talage.
But yeah, excited to be here. It's excited to be on the show and listen to quite a few episodes, and it's good to finally catch up with you and do this. So.
It's awesome. So for the guests, Adam and I don't really know each other. We met yesterday. Like, kind of ironically, we were taking a little ferry boat over, and we hung out. I'm like, "Hey, let's hang out." And we hung out for a few hours, talk shop, smoked some cigars, drank some beers. Yeah, it was awesome, man.
Yeah. Now we're best friends.
We are best friends. I think I know your whole life story. You know my whole life story.
Yeah, it's perfect. Godfather of my children soon, and the whole deal.
No, it's really good. So we're going to recap some of that.
Some
of the conversation from yesterday.
Absolutely.
So tell me about you. Where did you grow up? What did you do as a kid? What were you into?
Yeah, I grew up, we moved around a little bit when I was a kid, so, kind of bounced around a little, which, had its pros and cons. It made us really tight with our family, which was great. And we ended up in California, and I was a big kid. Obviously, it's a radio show, so you can't tell, but I'm a generally large person. How
tall are you?
About 6'4", 6'5".
6'4", 6'5", yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, running about, put on the winter weight, so it's about, 275 or so, trying to trim that down a little bit, but a big guy by most standards. And so got into sports, obviously, kind of bounced around with that a little bit, and kind of found my calling with football, probably not unsurprising. And so, I spent a lot of time playing football as a kid, and, kind of shaped who I am, kind of growing up in the locker room, and for better or worse, spent a lot of time there and kind of dictate the way I kind of run my life. So,
did you, when you were a kid, did you just wake up one day and say, "I want to play football"?
No.
How'd you come to that?
So I grew up in the Bay Area, mostly in California. And California had, this will shock the Texas listeners and other Southern state listeners, but there was a weight limit for football when you were under high school. And so actually,
no kidding.
Yeah. So I couldn't play.
Were they just worried about you hurting other kids?
I think that's general thought.
Wow.
And so when I was in 5th grade, I could have played with the 8th graders, which would have been like a disaster, right?
So you were really tall in high school too. Wow.
Yeah. So I showed up the first day of freshman football, which was, like 3 days after 8th grade ended. And I was like 6'2", 240 pounds or something like that.
Shit.
So that was my last day of freshman football. I went to JV.
Wow.
The next day. So yeah, you're going to come back to JV tomorrow. And so, as a kid, I played a lot of sports, but I wasn't really that good at any of them. And as I look back, I basically played all the sports like an offensive lineman would have played the other sports, right? Like basketball. I was really good at blocking people out and rebounding and had the touch of, nothing in basketball.
Were you any good at basketball?
I was halfway decent, defensive player, but I was not couldn't shoot, couldn't like Shaq, but not as big or strong. And so, kind of found football going into high school, and it was this is where I was supposed to be the whole time, right? And so, I kind of found my calling in football and had a lot of fun with it. And like I said, kind of, shaped the foundations of who I am, and had the opportunity to, play at the next level. Ended up at the University of Nevada, played football up there, and
nice.
Won a conference championship, ended up as captain.
Awesome.
And so won a bowl game. We went out to Hawaii, won a bowl game out there, which was a blast.
Man, that's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. It was a cool way to go through school.
So how'd you go from that to getting into our wonderful world of insurance and then insurance technology?
Right. I think like all, little boys, you grow up dreaming of being an insurance agent, right? So a secret dream of mine to, wrap up football and get into insurance. But no, like I was one of those players that, wasn't a pretty good college player, wasn't quite, the all American, kind of guy. And so, had a couple chances to get into the NFL. And so went to some camps, went to, some tryouts, things like that. Didn't pan out, and eventually my parents, kind of said, "You're gonna have to pay your own bills here at some point." And so, which was pretty quick, actually.
So you were like sleeping on the couch. It was a big couch, though, a very big couch,
big sectional. But yeah, so I needed a job, and actually my girlfriend at the time, her father was a principal of an agency, and I should say my girlfriend at the time. She's my wife now, but her father owned an agency, so knew a couple guys up in the Reno area who he had worked with in the past, and so got him with them, and I'm just trying to parlay my whatever local fame I had from football into a producer career.
Oh, no kidding! So then, is your father-in-law still in the business?
Yeah, he is.
He still owns an agency in Nevada.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. So then you became a producer. You went to work for an agency.
Yeah. Yeah, it started, like a lot of producers, right? Like taking the weird call-ins on Friday afternoon, right? Like somebody looking for some ridiculous coverage because they have some job tomorrow morning, right? Which was, and there's somebody like, I was talking with one of our employees the other day, and there's so many things you like learn in insurance. They're probably true in all industries, but like you learn them without realizing that they were valuable at the time, right? You're like, this is dumb. And then, 10 years later, you're going like, I'm glad I spent a lot of time doing that. Like that actually helped. And so we spend a lot of time just kind of taking these weird inbound calls and kind of prospecting small business owners and understanding kind of the pains of buying insurance and all that stuff from them, even before I even really understood what I was doing. Right. And so, understand sometimes people need insurance at Friday at 6:00 at night. Right. And what are your options for that if the agent doesn't pick up the phone and things like that? So it was, kind of the seeds for Talage long before I even recognized them as the seeds for Talage, right? And so, yeah, it was I can't say it was always fun, but I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. And it was a great agency to work for. And then, we got picked up by Wells Fargo, kind of a weird transaction. And so went from working for like a, it was a lot bigger than a mom and pop, but kind of a regional, very, very independent agency to go into, a very non-regional, non-independent agency working for Wells. And so, learned a lot from both of them, kind of good, bad, and indifferent, right? They all had kind of strengths and weaknesses in the way they ran their businesses. But again, like these little building blocks of, regional agencies have the problems. Wells Fargo and the other big guys have basically the same problem, just a different scale, right?
Yeah.
In terms of what they're actually doing there. And so,
what was that like? Just getting acquired at that age, like being pulled into the monster like that, because they are huge back then. You remember like around like what year that was? Like
it must have been. God, would have been 2008, maybe something like somewhere around there, ballpark.
They were crushing it back then. Yeah,
it was huge, and we talked a lot yesterday. I had the opportunity again, kind of one of these things I learned without knowing I was learning it, but had the opportunity. They were saw early on, I think earlier than some of the other agencies, some of the inefficiencies in the small business segment. So they were trying to build a call center up in Minneapolis and put all that together, and so I, was kind of the boots on the ground, mostly because I don't think anybody else wanted to do it at the time. But like I was kind of running how they were rolling up the Nevada book and kind of what they were shipping off to Minneapolis and the pros and cons of kind of a system like that and how you drive efficiency. And it was one of those things where it's like it felt like a good idea. The idea of like you got to make small business efficient, otherwise it doesn't work, right? And so again, like another little kind of seed for what eventually became Talage getting picked up there without even really knowing it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So then, what happened there? What happened with Wells, and then what happened after that?
So, I learned a lot from Wells really quickly, right? Like words I'd never even heard of before. And so, I know this is a shorter episode, so I may have to get into it later. But so I learned what a divestiture is, which was not taught in the business classes I took. But so eventually, the original entity that Wells had purchased on the insurance side divested from Wells Fargo because of some contract loopholes, and so half the company actually split. And so it was about a 100-person operation in Reno. And it was bigger than that outside of Reno, but about 100 in Reno. And it literally, I mean, I can't verify this, but I imagine that the management team for Wells and the management team for what became LP Insurance, I think literally sat in a room like kickball and like picked teams, and 50 people went to Wells and 50 people went to to the new entity or old entity, whatever it is. And I was going through the MBA program at Wells, and so I chose to kind of stick around on the Wells side of it because they were picking up the tab on my MBA, and so finished up with Wells, and then then from there I went to the carrier side, worked for Employers Insurance Work Comp Company out of Nevada, and had a blast working for them, and again kind of learned these different pieces, and it was really cool to kind of sit on the other side of the table, right? I spent 5-6 years on the brokerage side, and then I spent another few years on the other side of the table talking about appointments and production and compensation.
What did you do at Employers?
So I started out as just a territory manager. So I was running the Nevada territory.
Oh, okay.
So I ran the territory there, and then did well enough where they promoted me to the Western region. So I ran all the sales, the outside field sales staff for the Western region. So I was from Texas to Nevada. California was its own region because it was so big. Yeah. So Texas to Nevada was kind of my territory. And so flew around every week on the road all the time and meeting with agents all over the place. And that's really where like the ideas for Talage kind of started to cement, because it took kind of everything I learned at Wells, everything I learned at the regional agency before that, and then kind of melding that with, talking to great independent agencies all over this country, and then going, people in Dallas, Texas, and Fort Worth and Albuquerque were dealing with the same exact issues that Wells was dealing all over the place. Again, different scale sometimes, but like trying to figure out how do you get better at small business? And this better than most people I talk to. At that time, and this is probably, now it's probably 2012, 2013, 2014, something like that. And the carriers like finally starting to embrace some technology on the back end systems, right? Like putting in some predictive analytics and some automated underwriting systems, and kind of the genesis of kind of making it more automated on their end. But none of that kind of dragged through, right? Like it sort of kind of dragged through in a portal, kind of, but like it wasn't really, then you had this dichotomy of you had the carriers who have now made small business arguably their most profitable line of business, but for the independent agencies distributing the product, small business was absolutely the least profitable line of business. And so that's where, as a sales manager, I'm walking in agencies, big agencies all over the country going, and Employers is a very small business focused company. So I'm going in there saying like, you guys need to write more $7,500 or not even $7,500, $750 work comp policies, and they're like, get out of my office, right?
Yeah,
like,
get out of here. What a waste of time. I don't want to do that shit.
But if you write 100 of them, like, but I'm not going to write 100 of them, right? Like,
dude, you see this application on my desk right now? Look at the premium.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's looking at some $500,000 auto policy. I was like, but what about these $1,200 work comps?
They're profitable. Trust me. You can make money on this shit.
So that's really, I think, where kind of Talage kind of came to fruition. Where it's like there's got to be, whatever, not to be too cliched, right? There's got to be a better way to kind of handle this stuff, and how do you kind of bridge the gap there, and how can we do it in a way that, a big part of what we always wanted to do was keep the agents in the loop, right? Like we never thought, not going to call out by names, but some of the other early insurtechs that were going direct and they were cutting out the agency, right? Like that, I never believed that was the model. Never made any sense to me. I always felt like you needed an agent there at the end of the day, and so so true,
especially on the commercial lines.
Totally,
yeah.
Not that there aren't ways to make the agents more efficient, right? Like there's absolutely inefficiencies in the agency channel. That's not the point, but they can be better. But
we were talking about this yesterday. It's like people don't realize how expensive that is too. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, around that time when you were getting going, it's like small commercial, micro commercial, nano commercial, whatever the hell people want to call it these days, right? It was. The big brokers didn't want to do it. They were over it. Yep. But guys like you and others started coming out with solutions to help these brokers to sell small, micro commercial much more efficiently. Yep. And some of them started to offload it still to other partners like Bold Penguin, these kind of guys, right? And others looked at it as a new revenue stream. Yep. And that's still going on. It's still a thing. Still these big brokers are, they're going after it now in a different way, leveraging technology to do so. Because it's so hard to not.
Well, it's impossible, right? Especially with the general acquisition strategy of most of the bigger agencies, where you're buying up shops that have that type of business, right? Like, so even, every year they could, call out what they don't want in terms of small business or get rid of it or sell it off or whatever. But, the next time they buy a shop wherever, they're going to pick that back up again. And so I think they're recognizing you can't get rid of it. Nor do you want to, right? I think it'd be super sticky. It can really kind of be that kind of baseline revenue, right? Where it just grows. I mean, the loss ratios, generally speaking, are good on that type of business, right? The big accounts, everybody loves big, and this is certainly not my thoughts on this, but like everybody loves big accounts because it drives numbers and it's big hits and it's there's sexy wins, but like hurt when you lose one. Like they're hard to keep every year. It's a fight, in the renewals because every agent in town is trying to get into the same accounts, and so
totally.
You can really build like kind of a small kind of business empire on top of this little stuff, and then get that so baseline, and then when you get those big ones, it's great, right? Like, but you're not so dependent on 5 accounts, right? Like I know a lot of producers who had maybe not 5, but have 20 accounts, and that's all they have, and they like it's great. It's like it is until it's not, right?
Yeah, that's not good until a few of them for whatever reason decide to go and do something else.
Right, and as an agent, like it can be, let's assume it's a great agent. They're doing everything they can, and they're doing a great job. That your big customer gets acquired by somebody, you lose the account, right? Like, so there's a lot of ways to lose an account without doing anything wrong, and so. Like that's I learned, like I said, kind of at Wells that you can build a whole book on small business and can really kind of be the foundation and the cornerstone of what you build as an agency.
There's a lot of big shops that are now really focusing on small commercial and are crushing it.
Yeah,
like absolutely crushing it.
Yeah,
they are. So tell the audience about your business and how is your business different than others? Kind of elevator pitch on the company.
So we're trying to coin the phrase, and if I see Ivan soon, I'm gonna be pissed.
You heard it here first.
The idea of being this like a submission management platform, right? Like you have the agency management platforms, you got the policy management platforms on the back end with the carriers, right? And so we wanted to kind of be the submission management platform and kind of own that front end piece of it, right? And we kind of make a bad joke that I want to own that 1 month a year where you're submitting the policy, whether it's a renewal, whether it's a brand new piece of business, whatever you're talking to the carrier about issuing that policy, like that's the piece of the pie we want to own, right? Like we want, not only we need people like Applied and Vertifor and Nexture and whoever else to kind of own the other 11 months, right? We want to run concurrently to those systems, and I think the agency management system is and should be. I haven't seen anything better. Should be kind of the source of truth for an agency, and everything should run out of there. And so if we can run concurrent to that, that's where we want to be. And so Talage is a submission management platform. We built the whole thing on connecting essentially APIs into the carriers, and so it does the quoting and the issuing, binding, depending upon the carrier. Put an asterisk on all that stuff, right?
Yeah, right, totally.
All depends on the carrier. But the idea is, you can pull, a lot of the same kind of, multi-carrier SMC, whatever acronym you want to use for it, right? Like being able to be more efficient with your time. And so trying to build more automation into it where, you can automate renewal cycles. You can, to have these small businesses get the kind of touch and service they deserve, making sure you're getting the right pricing, right carrier with it all. But not doing it in a way where, your CSRs and your producers are spending, 2 hours or more, re-quoting an account every year. And so that's the idea, is kind of, streamline that small business cycle. Allow for better cross-sell opportunities, do some of that thing in a more automated way where we can say, hey, we have a work comp and a general liability policy on the books. Because of that, I can almost guarantee we don't need to ask you any more questions to sell you a cyber policy, right? And so can automatically take the information from other policies, pull to cyber with it, go back to the agency, they can offer it back to the business owner. If nothing else, to cover their own, that they're offering cyber, right? And hopefully actually driving new revenue into them from the cross-sell opportunities.
When you were at Wells and you really got to learn the agency, because you were at an agency and you were doing your thing. I expect you really learned how different all those agencies are and how they sell. Yeah. But there's like that commonality of leveraging a solution like you built potentially. Yeah. To help automate, help with a lot of those tasks. It's funny, we were talking a little bit about this yesterday, but agents have a hard time still seeing that, adopting that, right? And Chip, I remember what it was. Chip and I on our podcast, we went off on this whole thing. Chip Rossiocco in the other podcast with listeners, we were talking about, he coins it the producer availability challenge is what he says. And he's talking, when he says that, he's talking specifically around like leads coming in and stuff like that, and then not answering and, being prompt and getting after it, right? When somebody calls them, because a lot of them have a nice big book and they already have their core customers. Like you said, I got my 20 top customers, and Jeff from Jeff's Construction Inc. needs this thing, and I'm going to go, hang out with him and have lunch and whatever, right? But the challenge really is producers, not really producers, agencies, right? Adopting this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, right? It's the thing we talk about all the time.
It's definitely a challenge, right? Like, and I don't think there's any InsurTech or insurance software, like if InsurTech's not cool word anymore.
Whatever, it's still cool. Come on, man. Pays my bills.
Very cool. I try to tell my wife how cool it is all the time. She's not convinced.
It's funny because the guy just came over here to ask me what we do, and I always explain to people, and it's like always like, really exciting stuff is how I end it, because they just, the eyes just gloss over. They're like,
we make insurance software.
They're like, oh, okay, yeah, see ya.
I just switched recently. My wife's making fun of me because like people say, "What do I do?" and she'd be like. I hate saying that, like I'm the founder of the CEO, right? So I just say I sell software, which is 100% true, right? Like that totally is what I do. That's for a job. Yeah. So I say I sell software, they immediately like back off because like, don't. Like, if you tell me, you probably know, like, if you say you're CEO, like they want to sell you something. Like if I say I'm selling software, they're like, don't sell me anything.
That's so true. It's so funny.
But I got backed in the corner one time. I met this guy, and he's like, "What do you do?" I was like, "Oh, I sell software." And he's like, "Oh, I'm an engineer." He's like, "I've actually been looking at getting into some software companies in town." And I was like, "Oh, like we're always hiring engineers, right?" I was like, "Shit." I was like, "Well, like we might be hiring." And he goes, "Oh, like who do I talk to?" And I was like, "Well, like me." Like, so I do sell software. That's true, but like I also do a couple other things around here. But it's been fun. Anyway, what was the last question? Just agency adoption stuff, right? And I think agents are, they're stubborn, right? And I think they're kind of set in their ways. And I think it's easy for, especially established producers to get pretty comfortable in the way that they operate. And it's definitely an uphill of job where, you can bust your ass for the first 20 years. And I know in no way mean this to be offensive, but like you can kind of cruise for the other 20, right? You build up your book and you can get to a point where you make it very comfortable lifestyle for you and your family, right? Without having to do a whole lot more. And so I think you kind of have this older generation that's pretty comfortable, pretty set in their ways. And then you have a newer generation that's trying to figure out exactly how they build their careers. And then I think they kind of looping through the whole thing. You have this, insurance agents have been under attack for the last 100 years, right? It's why agent organizations like the Big I exist, right? They're protecting agencies. And so I think, InsurTech came out real hard, whether on purpose or not, but, kind of attacking the agent at first, right? Like, it was going to disrupt the agent, replace the agent's going to die. And, they've been predicting the death of the insurance agent for 100 years, right? And so I think there was some reluctance at first that, InsurTech was competitive to the agency's livelihood.
True.
And so I think there's a little bit of reluctance at first with that. And there were a lot of people that are trying to do kind of a direct replace the agency thing, right? I think most of them have mostly not panned out, right? I think to your point, like people want an agent involved. And so that's where I think we were a little bit different was, from the jump, it wasn't, kind of this line about, a lot of people were out there trying to make it easier to buy insurance. And where we wanted to focus on was making it easier to sell insurance, right? Like focus it from the agency side of the table and then really kind of help their problems. And then, we figured we'd make it better for the business owner at the end of the day by doing that. But mostly we wanted to make it better for the agency. And so I think there's reluctance in the agencies, and it's, there's a lot of noise out there too. And
there's a lot of noise.
Again, better than most people I talk to, like some of it works pretty good. Some of it doesn't work as well, right? Like, there's a lot of noise, a lot of fluff. And so, for agents, I think the Big I, the efforts that they're doing and where they can kind of, and some of these other organizations where they kind of tech councils and things like that, right? Where you can kind of not test things out, but like, right, if they can vet it a little bit, going like, all right, like, we don't think Ivan's is, full of shit. Like, we don't think Talage is full of shit. Like,
right, totally.
Maybe they don't call out the ones they do think is full of shit, but at least they can kind of endorse the ones they like.
Depends on
right?
who you talk to. But
not publicly anyway.
And to be fair too, like, not after dinner, we have some cocktails at the bar. You were there. One of the guys was showing me photos of his, 150-foot yacht.
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's like, hey,
back to that same thing. Hey, you want to sell more $100 policies?
You know what I mean?
No, he does not, right?
And he's an older guy. I mean, he's looking to take his yacht around the world or whatever he's going to do.
I got to meet him before I leave.
So I mean, to be fair, and it's like we kind of look at this stuff as technologists and entrepreneurs and small business owners and whatnot. It's like, why wouldn't you want to make it better? Like, drive more, drive more, drive more.
Yep.
And I mean, dude, like that dude, he's got no boss. He's the boss.
Nope.
He's got a big ass boat and a big ass house and all the things, and he's happy.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of insurance is that way too. Like, even if you back up from the individual, right? Like, you go to the carriers and like, and I know you deal with the carriers a lot, and like some of the things they do is crazy, right? But then you like look at their balance sheets and it's like, well, it's not that crazy, right? Like, everyone's making a lot of money, like claims are getting paid. Like generally insurance works, right? Like, that's where like a lot of these kind of insurtechs that come in that don't have insurance experience, I think kind of this arrogant attitude like insurance is broken, right? Like, insurance is not broken. Like, it works, it functions. It's like insurance is inefficient, like that's probably true, right? But
totally.
But the idea that it's broken, I think, is crazy.
It is crazy. We were talking about that yesterday, how all these people come in and just like nobody knows what they're doing and blah, 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 blah. It works and people make real money doing it, but it's, look, there's a lot of things that can be fixed.
Oh, of course.
And guys like yourself are fixing these things. Yeah. But I think that's every industry. Absolutely. When you get into it, when you really get into it, like especially at the enterprise level, like it's big, old, like technology stuff, right?
Yep.
I mean, especially in an industry like ours, as old as it is, right?
It was, I remember, and I love them. They're a great partner of ours, and they're, I won't pick on them because I'm going to pick on them a little bit. But I remember we were getting started, and they were one of the first carriers we got on our platform, right? So we're going through this contracting process with them and everything. And at the time, they didn't even know really what we were trying to do, right? Like, they couldn't quite wrap their head around it. And so trying to explain it to them. And so, they're giving us some standard contract. That didn't even really make any sense for what we were actually trying to accomplish. But so I'm filling it out. And I sent it to them, and finally they're like, all right, we think we can do something with you like this. I think we get it. I said, okay. So I signed the contract. I filled it all out, sent it back to him, and he calls and he goes, you left the fax line blank on your contract. I was like, God, shit, send it back. Like, you still haven't figured out what we're trying to do. You completely missed the point. Like, give me back that contract. Like, let's keep talking through this. If what you got from me was I need a fax line, like, I severely misled you, right? Like, it's like shit. But it's a big old industry, right? There's a lot. I think you're absolutely right. Like, it's easy to pick on insurance because I think we know it and love it most of the time. And there's a lot of industries that do the exact same thing, and probably maybe worse, right? You look at, there's all kinds of software coming into medical billing and all kinds of stuff, right? Like, the way the systems aren't connected and all that kind of stuff, and it's not different than what we're trying to accomplish in insurance.
Give us some advice to an insurtech startup or startup in general. You went from football to the agency to Wells to now what you do. Some advice.
I think it's patience, right? And we still got a long way to go, but I think it's patience and perseverance, and you got to understand that, as hot as you think you are, we're not going to call up, we're not going to call up the idea that, when we were just getting started, right? A couple guys, on a laptop, are going to walk into travelers and tell them that they've been doing everything wrong for the last 150 years, right? Like,
people do.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And travelers should throw them out every time, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I think, like the patience and understanding that, like, you're trying to make real change. It takes time sometimes. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, right? Kind of the idea that you come up with a software company, you build a prototype, and somebody buys it for $100 million, right? Like, that has happened, but like, it's very, very rare, right? Like, and so like, you're gonna have to grind it out. And one of our first investors, I remember he made a comment. He was like, we like to do a lot of, vetting personally. He's like, because we're probably gonna be working with you for the next 10 years, right? Yeah. Like, was kind of his attitude on it. And I, at the time was like, 10 years, like, please, like, this is gonna take 10 months, maybe, right? Like, but now we're 7 years in, right? So we're getting there. And so, I think there's a lot of truth in that, and you got to be patient, you got to grind with it, and then, this kind of, you build Facebook in a dorm room and somebody buys it.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty rare. And I think building a company it's a lot of hard work. And even on the software side, right? Maybe it looks glamorous and romanticized from the outside, but it's just like building anything else. And,
totally is.
Yeah. So I'd say patience and perseverance and like just like absolute like stubbornness and refusal to say no, right? To accept no. I guess. Not say no, say yes lots, but to accept no.
That's good feedback. So last question. What's your favorite drink?
Favorite drink? I've just recently moved to tequila.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so I've been doing tequila for about a year. And
Tequila's
my wife,
a complex, man. Like that's a rabbit hole.
Dude, I'm into
that's a rabbit hole like no other.
Well, tequila, like you know, like when we were in college, right? Tequila, you had Cuervo.
Oh yeah, totally.
And that was it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it all kind of tasted, you know, not great. But like now, you know, tequila's gotten a lot better, right? Like, it's kind of gone down the bourbon the path where it's got a lot more complex. You got a lot of craft flavor, people are doing different things, and so yeah, I've been into tequila a lot. My wife keeps telling me that ice is not a mixer, but I disagree. Again, tequila and ice, like that's a mixed drink, right? Makes it sound better.
It's good. Well, hey man, thanks for
thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It was great.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was good, man, and good luck with everything.
Thank you very much. We'll see you out there.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's this common thread that we keep hearing across these episodes that people that come from the industry, that solve real problems for this industry, stick around in this industry, right? And so the ones that are out there that are solving problems that don't come from the industry, don't get mad at me. It's just a common thread that we're seeing here. But hey, what a great guy. Adam's awesome. Wish him the best of luck. I really appreciate him coming on the show. In our next episode, we're going to be interviewing another person from the InsurTech Summit in Savannah, Georgia. Stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.